For decades, destinations competed primarily on price, accessibility, and attractions. Who could offer the best price, build the most rooms, attract the most visitors, and create the most excitement. And for many years, that model worked. But increasingly, travelers now, and again, I cited the sources, they're looking for something deeper. People are no longer simply collecting destinations. They are collecting experiences, stories, meaning, and the modern traveler, the traveler of today, this is coming from Annals of Tourism Research, they want more than a vacation. They want transformation. They want to learn. They want to connect. They want to contribute. And they want experiences that enrich their lives. You know, when our junior minister of tourism was speaking this morning, she spoke about experiential and immersive tourism products, and those are trends today. So this is particularly true among younger travelers and increasingly among high-value luxury travelers. And it creates a tremendous opportunity for destinations that are prepared to embrace it. The destinations that will command premium value in the future are not necessarily those with the largest resorts. They will be the destinations with the strongest stories. And I heard that coming through the presentation from our premier this morning. The strongest values, the strongest environmental credentials, the strongest sense of place, and few destinations possess that than BVI. Think about what makes BVI recognized, right? What's the first thing that comes to mind when you think BVI? Water, the oceans, and so on, right? I did this similar talk in Jamaica, and I asked, what is famous about Jamaica? And somebody said jerk and so on, but we had one guy shouted weed at the back, so I was glad that was not one. But what makes BVI globally recognized? It's not the skyscrapers or the mega resorts. It's not mass tourism. It's the sea. It's the sailing culture, and you guys are spot on. You know, it's the freedom of movement between islands. It's that intimate experience that you get. It's the connection with people and nature. It's the feeling of being part of something authentic. And authenticity is something that it's one of the most valuable commodities in tourism. Because authenticity cannot be copied. You can't manufacture it, you can't download it, it can't be artificially created. And it must be protected. And that brings us to one of the most defining challenges of our generation, climate change. For many years, climate change was viewed primarily as an environmental issue. And you are right, it's not an environmental issue only. It's an economic issue, it's an investment issue, it's a tourism issue, it's a competitive issue. You know, and what does climate change mean for destination like ours in the region? Well, warmer oceans means what? More intense storms. You have coral bleaching, sea level rise, coastal erosion, sargassum influxes, all right? Water stress as well. And water stress not only based on consumption, but if I had the time, I would go into tying water to global prices that we pay for commodities and services. Because a lot of our goods come through the Panama Canal, and it is fresh water that causes the rise and the fall and the Panama Canal to work. But I don't have time to go through that, but it has a direct impact to global prices as well. Insurance, vulnerability, supply chain disruptions, and so on. They affect airports, hotels, marinas, you know, the entire tourism spectrum. So climate resilience is extremely, extremely important. And it is becoming a prerequisite for long-term competitiveness. Investors increasingly evaluate climate risk before making decisions. And visitors increasingly evaluate sustainability before booking trips. Financial institutions increasingly consider resilience when allocating capital. And of course, insurance providers increasingly assess vulnerability when setting premiums. So the destinations that invest in resilience today will attract investment tomorrow. The destinations that delay adaptation may find themselves at a growing competitive disadvantage. but within every challenge lies opportunity. And I believe the Caribbean has an opportunity unlike any other region in the world. We can become the global laboratory for climate-smart tourism development. And think about that for a moment. What if the Caribbean became known not only for beautiful beaches? What if we became known as the region that pioneered climate-resilient tourism? What if we became known as the region that transformed vulnerability into innovation? What if we became known as the region that showed the world how tourism could restore ecosystems instead of degrading them? And what if the British Virgin Islands became the leader of that movement? Because leadership is not determined by size. Leadership is determined by vision. Some of the world's most influential ideas have emerged from small places, small countries, small communities, small islands. In fact, at the last COP in Brazil, I'm not sure if you guys know, but CTO, the Caribbean, had more speaking engagements than any other region in the entire world. And they were asking about regenerative tourism practices and how that is linked to building climate resilience. 5 speaking engagements. You had some places that didn't have any, right? So it just shows you. So small destinations, actually, they possess something that larger destinations struggle to achieve: agility. The ability to move quickly, the ability to innovate, the ability to experiment, to become pioneers. And that is why I believe BVI should not aspire merely to be sustainable, but, and while sustainability is important, sustainability is increasingly becoming that minimum standard of operation. The future belongs to destinations that go beyond sustainability. And that's why I spoke about regenerative tourism earlier. It belongs to those regenerative destinations. Many people use those terms interchangeably, but as I said, it's not the same thing. And I explained the definitions and so on earlier. Now, the future of tourism increasingly lies in improvement. Imagine visitors arriving in the BVI, not simply to consume experiences, but to contribute to them. Imagine visitors helping restore coral reefs, supporting mangrove restoration, participating in turtle conservation, funding seagrass protection, supporting local entrepreneurs, building and contributing to climate resilience. Imagine visitors becoming partners in preservation. And we will do a lot of imagining as this talk goes on. And that is the future, and it creates something very powerful, a destination with now purpose. Because purpose is becoming one of the strongest drivers of travel decisions. People increasingly want their travel choices to reflect values. They want to know their vacation contributed to something meaningful. Current Issues has an entire special issue on that. And when that happens, tourism becomes more than an industry, it becomes a movement. And the BVI is uniquely positioned to lead that movement because of its identity as an ocean destination. Not a beach destination, an ocean destination, and there's a difference. Beach tourism is about observation, ocean tourism is about participation. The sea is not merely scenery here. It's culture, it's heritage, it's economy, it's lifestyle, it's identity. The future of tourism products of the BVI should reflect that reality. Every tourism experience should reinforce the connection between people and the ocean. Every visitor should leave with a deeper appreciation for marine ecosystems. Every tourism investment should strengthen environmental resilience. Every development decision should consider future generations, because the future belongs to destinations that understand that simple truth. Nature is not separate from tourism. Nature is tourism. The BVI already possesses one of the most valuable tourism brands in the world. The question is not whether the BVI has the potential to lead. The question is whether we are prepared to think boldly enough to realize that potential. because I believe that the opportunity before us is extraordinary. Not to become the largest destination, as I said, not to become the busiest one, not to become the most admired destinations in the world, but a destination that proves tourism can be profitable, sustainable, resilient, and inclusive, and regenerative. At the same time, it's a destination that demonstrates what the future looks like. A destination that helps define the next chapter of global tourism. And if we embrace that vision, the BVI can become something truly remarkable. And that is the opportunity before us. Now, in the first part of my discussion so far, we spoke about tourism development and growth. You know, the second aspect of what I spoke about sustainability and regeneration. And this is where I believe that the BVI has the opportunity to distinguish itself, you know, now that we're moving into that regenerative aspect of it. So the destinations around the world, they're asking about environmental footprints. They're asking about how are you creating carbon positive footprints and so on. How are you creating those transformational experiences, right? And that's where innovation becomes critical. Now, I had 10 transformational tourism product ideas to share with BVI, but because of time, I'm keeping an eye on it. I'm going to share 5 of those ideas, all right? And these are not just theoretical concepts. Many of these elements within these products that I'm sharing with you, they are already emerging globally. And the opportunity is now just to try to integrate them into a uniquely BVI experience. So, tourism product 1, the world's first regenerative charter experience. The BVI is already recognized as the world's great sailing destinations. And what if it became the world's first regenerative sailing destination? Imagine booking a yacht charter where every voyage contributes directly to environmental restoration. Guests could participate in coral restoration activities, citizen science programs, marine biodiversity monitoring, sea turtle conservation initiatives, all right? Think of an African safari, but just in the ocean, you know, using turtles, tagging them, and so on, right? Plastic removal initiatives, seagrass mapping. Every charter would then leave a measurable positive impact. Visitors would not simply sail through paradise, but they would help restore paradise. Imagine the marketing message: sail the Caribbean, restore the Caribbean. Imagine luxury travelers sharing that experience with friends. Imagine yacht owners proudly displaying certification, indicating that their vessels contribute to ecosystem restoration. Imagine charter companies competing not only on service quality, but on conservation impact. The BVI could become the benchmark against which sustainable and regenerative yachting is measured worldwide. So that's one product. Tourism product 2, the BVI Ocean Conservation Passport. Visitors increasingly seek experiences with purpose. Imagine every visitor receiving a digital ocean conservation passport. Throughout their stay, they earn conservation credits by participating in activities such as coral planting, mangrove restoration, beach cleanups, marine education programs, citizen science initiatives again, support for local conservation organizations. Each activity unlocks rewards, recognition, and environmental impact tracking. Visitors could monitor their contributions online long after they return home. The vacation experience would continue beyond departure. The emotional connection would deepen, and repeat visitation would increase because people return to places where they feel they have made a difference. So that's product 2. Tourism product 3, carbon negative honeymoons. And I like this one. The global wedding and honeymoon market is enormous. There are 2 trends happening right now. People are celebrating more. And they're celebrating two things more, and I'm citing the trends in this. One is they're celebrating a lot of honeymoons and marriages and so on. And then you also have another market emerging, and this first emerged in Germany, where they are celebrating a divorce. They're celebrating a breakup. So you do have companies that are packaging places where you can travel and celebrate a breakup. You know, as a little girls' gang, and they go together and they have a, right. But I'm talking about the former one, right? The honeymoon one. So the wedding market is enormous. So imagine if the British Virgin Islands became known for something entirely unique, carbon negative honeymoons. A couple arrives in the BVI. During their stay, they participate in, those activities I called out earlier, mangrove planting, coral restoration, marine conservation, etc. And upon departure, they receive GPS coordinates of their restoration site, digital tracking of the environmental impact, annual updates on ecosystem growth, photographic progress reports. And 10 years later, they return and visit the reef they helped restore. 20 years later, they celebrate an anniversary beside mangroves they helped plant. And that is not simply tourism. That is a lifelong emotional relationship with a destination. Tourism product 4, blue carbon tourism. And one of the most exciting opportunities in tourism is something many people have never heard of, blue carbon. Mangroves, seagrass meadows, coastal wetlands. These ecosystems capture and store significant amounts of carbon. And yet very few destinations are interpreting this story for visitors. BVI could become a leader. Imagine blue carbon kayak expeditions, guided mangrove discovery tours, climate and ocean education experiences, a blue carbon learning center, conservation excursions. Visitors will learn how marine ecosystems help combat climate change while supporting biodiversity and coastal resilience. Education becomes an attraction. Conservation becomes an experience. And climate action becomes a tourism product. Let me share one more tourism product with you. Something called dark sky tourism. Now, there are many different types of tourism products. One of the fastest growing niches globally is something called dark sky tourism. Why? Because much of the world can no longer see the stars. Urbanization, light pollution, technology, modern lifestyles. People increasingly crave connection with the night sky. The BVI possess extraordinary potential. Imagine luxury stargazing yacht excursions, astronomy retreats, celestial navigation experiences, astrophotography workshops, dark sky festivals, marine astronomy experiences, visitors learning how ancient mariners navigated oceans using stars, combining culture, science, history, wellness, and nature into one unforgettable experience. And the stars above the BVI may become one of the most valuable untapped tourism assets. And I'm not going to share the next 5 examples because of time. Now, these products I called out, they share something important. They are difficult to replicate. Any destination could build another hotel. Any destination can create another excursion. But not every destination can build a meaningful movement. Not every destination can connect visitors emotionally to place. Not every destination can transform tourism into stewardship. And BVI has that opportunity to become known for something far greater than beautiful scenery. It can become known as a destination where tourism restores nature, where visitors become guardians, where luxury and sustainability become inseparable, where climate action becomes experiential, where tourism creates measurable positive impact. And if that happens, the BVI will not merely compete in the tourism industry of the future, it will help invent it. Now, if there's one area where BVI truly possesses that leadership is in the area of yachting, right? When people hear the words BVI, immediately they think of sailing, as we said before. Or if you're hungry and you're in Totola, you think of Sushi Bar, which is that restaurant, right? But you think of freedom, you think of adventure, you think island hopping, you think of those turquoise waters. You think of one of the greatest sailing destinations on earth. And that reputation was not built overnight. It was built through decades of vision, investment, entrepreneurship, and stewardship. It is one of the territory's greatest success stories. But today I want to suggest something important. The next chapter of that story has not yet been written. Because while the BVI is already one of the world's premier sailing destinations, I believe it can become something even more significant. It can become the sustainable yachting capital of the world's climate-positive sailing destination. Not one of the leaders, but the leader. The destination against which all others are measured. The place that defines the future of marine tourism, and I believe the timing of this could not be better. Because the global maritime industry is changing. The global tourism industry is changing, and of course the investment community is changing. And increasingly, sustainability is becoming a competitive advantage rather than an environmental objective. Around the world, yacht manufacturers, they're already exploring electric propulsion. Hybrid systems are becoming more common. Renewable energy, battery technology improving. You've had smart marine systems are becoming more sophisticated. Environmental regulations are becoming more stringent. Customer expectations are evolving. So the future of yachting is arriving. And the question is simple. Will the BVI help shape that future, or will it follow it? And I believe we can shape it. Imagine a visitor arriving in the BVI 10 years from now. As they enter a marina, they encounter the world's most advanced, sustainable marine environment. Solar-powered facilities, smart energy systems, water conservation technologies, electric charging infrastructure, waste recovery systems, circular economy practices. And that's something I believe can be adopted not just by the marine aspect of BVI, but also on land and inland properties. Circular economy is considered one of the next best practices. And in fact, it's so efficient that you can take things that you generally would throw to waste and create something that is of a higher value. So I've given examples where we've worked with students and we take the stale cooking oil from your kitchen that you normally dump, and you can make soap. You can make a hand soap through spawnification. You just need some lye crystal, some warm water, and you do it outside in a bucket. And you get some little molds and you can create a hand soap. And that will save you some money. You can actually, through circular economy, you can take cardboard that you normally get products in, strip down the cardboard, and you can grow mushrooms on them. What was once waste can now become a food source, right? And something of valuable. So suddenly, tourism, and when we adopt these systems, it becomes more than just tourism, And this is where the opportunity truly becomes exciting, because sustainability and moving in that direction of sustainability should never be viewed solely as a cost. It should be viewed as an economic opportunity. And some of the world's fastest growing industries, they're emerging around clean technology, and I mentioned some of those already. And that's what the science data and journals are saying. Now, the BVI is uniquely positioned to connect these sectors to tourism, and in so doing, create a new model for destination development. Imagine establishing as well the world's first sustainable charter certification program. Every participating operator meets the standards related to environmental management, waste reduction, energy efficiency, marine conservation, and so on. Visitors gain confidence knowing that they are supporting responsible businesses. The entire destination strengthens its brand. Over time, sustainable certification becomes not the exception, but the norm. The BVI develops a reputation for excellence, and excellence attracts premium markets. But becoming the sustainable yachting capital of the world requires more than technology. It requires vision, leadership, collaboration. And we heard collaboration 7 times this morning. Government cannot achieve this alone. The private sector cannot achieve this alone. Mariners cannot achieve this alone. Charter operators cannot do this alone. Environmental organizations can't do this alone. Success requires alignment, a shared vision, a collective commitment, a belief that long-term value is more important than short-term convenience. And there's another reason why it matters. I spoke about climate resilience and why it's so important already. So I want us to think again beyond vessels and infrastructure. What if the BVI became the world's leading center for sustainable yachting education? Imagine an international sustainable yachting academy, training the future marine professionals, developing sustainability standards, supporting research, providing technical expertise, hosting international conferences, building regional capacity. Imagine young people from across the Caribbean traveling to the BVI to learn about the future of marine tourism. Imagine the territory becoming synonymous not only with sailing excellence, but with knowledge and innovation. And that is a powerful economic opportunity, because knowledge economies generate value far beyond traditional tourism expenditure. Now imagine taking that concept even further. What if every visitor leaving the BVI became an ambassador for ocean stewardship? Imagine charter guests receiving information about coral ecosystems, marine biodiversity, climate resilience, conservation initiatives, responsible boating experiences, etc. Imagine millions of conversations taking place globally because visitors learn something meaningful during their time here. The impact would extend far beyond our shores. The BVI would not simply host visitors, it would be inspiring them. And perhaps that is one of the most important roles tourism can play in the 21st century. Not merely entertaining people, but educating them, connecting them, empowering them, creating advocates for environmental stewardship, champions for sustainable development, creating global ambassadors. You know, when people think about the future of yachting, I want them to think about BVI. When investors think about sustainable marine tourism, they should think about BVI. When policymakers seek examples of innovation, I want them to study BVI. When visitors seek meaningful sailing experiences, BVI, because the future of marine tourism is not merely about bigger vessels or larger mariners or more arrivals. It is about smarter systems, cleaner technologies, healthier ecosystems, more resilient infrastructure, stronger communities, and deeper relationship between tourism and nature. Now, the BVI already possess the foundation. You already have the brand, the reputation, the geography, the expertise, the marine culture, and the entrepreneurial spirit. The opportunity is now to connect these strengths into a bold, inspiring vision. A vision that positions the territory not simply as one of the world's great sailing destinations, but as the destination that redefined what yachting could become. Now, when many people hear the words artificial intelligence, they immediately think about robots or computers or technology replacing people, or perhaps they think about ChatGPT writing their reports at work, right? But in all seriousness, we are living through one of the most significant technological transformations in modern history. Artificial intelligence is not another technology trend. It's a foundational technology. Like electricity, the internet, smartphones, and every industry is being affected. Tourism, no exception. The destinations that understand this transformation and embrace it strategically will possess a major competitive advantage. Destinations that ignore it risk being left behind. And that was taken directly from Current Issues in Tourism, one of those journals out in New Zealand. Now, technology could never, and it should never, replace the human experience, particularly in the Caribbean, because hospitality is not technology. Hospitality is a human connection. No algorithm can replace that Caribbean warmth, especially with visiting islands like BVI. You really feel the Caribbean warmth and the warm welcome. I had breakfast yesterday, and immediately I met Albert, the chef, from this resort. I met, the housekeepers, all the wait staff and so on. They were so friendly. They were coming over. Miss Jean, who's been here since 1984, she tells me, and already you so many friends you've made in just that small little short period of time. So as I said, no machine or technology can ever replace that, right? But it should be used to enhance experiences, right? So the future destinations must therefore become both high-tech and high-touch. And that represents an extraordinary opportunity. And again, I want you to imagine again, for 10 years from now, a visitor begins planning their trip, using an intelligent destination platform. It helps them customize their experience based on their interests: marine adventures, wellness, conservation, culture, cuisine, yachting, adventure, education. Every itinerary becomes personalized. Every recommendation becomes more relevant. Every experience becomes more meaningful. Before the visitor even arrives, they feel connected to the destination. Now imagine what happens once they arrive. Artificial intelligence helps distribute visitor flows. We were hearing about carrying capacity earlier. Now there are different types of carrying capacity as well. There's a marine carrying capacity, there's a land carrying capacity, there's real carrying capacity, there's physical carrying capacity. There are so many different types. There's a social carrying capacity as well, right? So using the technology, it can help you with, handling and understanding carrying capacities, understanding sustainable problems at destinations, helping with cluster development. I'm getting excited now, and I want to go into cluster, but it will take me too much, so I will skip that. Now, again, technology provides an important avenue for us to take advantage of and move forward. Now, much of this technology, it already exists. The question is whether we will use it strategically across the BVI, where managers receive real-time information that improves sustainability and efficiency simultaneously. You can lower costs, reduce waste, improve your environmental performance, enhance your visitor experience, and that is a powerful combination. Now imagine applying similar concepts to environmental conservation. Artificial intelligence can help analyze coral reef health, track marine biodiversity, monitor your populations of marine life, identify invasive species, evaluate ecosystem changes. So for those destinations whose economic success depends on healthy natural environments, this capability is invaluable because you cannot manage what you cannot measure. And technology allows us to do that. Now, imagine something else. Imagine establishing a British Virgin Islands Ocean Innovation Hub, a place where entrepreneurs, researchers, students, investors, and innovators come together to solve some of the most pressing challenges that are facing our islands. right? Sargassum, coral restoration, etc., right? But we can have, through an ocean innovation hub, you can have a solution for, it can become a center for ideas, solutions, innovations, right? Starting up accelerators, research partnerships, investment forums, technology showcases, etc. Because it can also position itself to generate tremendous value. Because the global innovation economy is growing rapidly. And investors follow innovation, and talent follows innovation, and universities follow innovation, and entrepreneurs follow innovation. So therefore, it allows scope to be a bit more innovative as well. And think about how powerful that could be for future generations of young Virgin Islanders. Not only jobs in tourism, but opportunities in, and we heard some of the wide spectrum, earlier, technology, research, marine science, climate adaptation, data analytics, renewable energy, entrepreneurship, diversification creates resilience. Resilience creates long-term prosperity, and that is exactly what small island economies need. Right. So the destinations that lead tomorrow will not be those destinations willing to reinvent themselves today. Sorry. The destinations that lead tomorrow will be the destinations willing to reinvent themselves today. And that is why innovation should not be viewed as a project. It should be viewed as a mindset, a culture, a way of thinking, a willingness to challenge assumptions, a willingness to experiment, a willingness to imagine possibilities. Because every major breakthrough begins with a simple question: what if? What if tourism could restore ecosystems? What if it could become climate positive? What if destinations could predict risks before they occur? What if the BVI became the smartest island destination in the Caribbean? What if it became one of the smartest island destinations in the world? Those questions may sound ambitious, but ambition has always been the starting point of progress. All right. And if there's one issue that will redefine Caribbean tourism, it's resilience. And of course, by embedding and following through some of these product ideas, you can strengthen your product, your tourism product. Now, I want to move, because of time, to an aspect of the speech where I speak about, as we look forward towards the future of tourism, there's one reality we must acknowledge. No Caribbean destination, regardless of its success, can achieve its full potential alone. Not the BVI, not Jamaica, not Barbados, not Bahamas, not St. Lucia, not any destination in our region. Because many of the opportunities before us are shared opportunities. And many of the challenges before us are shared challenges. Climate change doesn't stop at borders. Hurricanes don't stop at the borders. Sargassum does not stop at borders. Labor shortages do not stop at borders. Airlift challenges certainly do not stop at borders. And if we're being completely honest, there are still days when traveling between Caribbean islands feels more complicated than traveling between continents. And we've all experienced it. A traveler can sometimes fly from Europe to the Caribbean more easily than from one Caribbean island to another. And that is not criticism. That is simply a reminder that we still have work to do. The future of Caribbean tourism will increasingly depend on our ability to think regionally while acting locally. For many years, destinations have focused primarily on competition, competing for visitors, competing for investment, competing for market share, competing for visibility. Competition will always exist, but increasingly collaboration is becoming equally important. And we need to look in those spaces and places for collaboration where it did not exist before. And I'll give you a good example. And you don't have to share anything similar. The Caribbean Tourism Organization has a partnership, and CHE as well. We have this partnership with CIMH, the Caribbean Institute for Hydrology and Meteorology. Now, hydrology and meteorology as a science is something totally different to tourism as a science. What does the climate and the weather have to do with us, right? So what we did is we created this partnership where CTO and CHTA, the tourism public and private sector, we worked together with CIMH to create a tourism climatic bulletin. What this bulletin does is it tells our tourism stakeholders what they should do within the next quarter. So in fact, the climatic bulletin is saying we're going to get a lot of heat waves, we're going to get a lot of droughts, we may have, certain types of conditions. So the bulletin will then tell our stakeholders, hey, you know what, these things are going to happen. So you need to stockpile on certain types of food. You need to have a bit more indoor activity. You may have a lot of Sahara dust in the air. Get some masks and so on. So it helps with planning and managing, right? So that is an example of trying to find partners so that you can work together to create something better. Now, as we continue to innovate, adapt, and inspire, I want to conclude. I think I heard somebody breathe a sigh of relief just now. Huh? Yeah. Right? But just as I began today, I want to leave you with a thought. Throughout history, every generation has inherited a choice between managing the status quo and shaping something better, a choice between reacting to change and leading it, a choice between protecting what exists and creating what is possible. The choice now stands before us, not only here in the BVI, and not only across the Caribbean, but throughout the global tourism industry. Because tourism is at a crossroads. The decisions we make here today will influence what our destinations look like 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 50 years from now. The destinations we make today will influence the opportunities available to future generations, the health of our ecosystems, communities, our economies, our cultures, and ultimately the legacy we leave behind. Right? And the BVI embraces that future, that future generations may not remember these islands merely as one of the world's premier sailing destinations. They may remember them as something more significant. The place that helped redefine tourism, the place that proved regeneration is possible, the place that demonstrated climate leadership, the place that showed that small islands can change the world. Because these islands may be small in geography, but they are immense in influence, immense in beauty, immense in resilience, and immense in possibility. And perhaps the future of tourism will not belong to the destinations that build the most. Perhaps it will belong to destinations wise enough to protect what matters most. The destinations courageous enough to merely to sustain paradise, but to regenerate it. The destinations bold enough to imagine a better future and determined enough to build it. And I think I can think of a few places better positioned to lead that movement than BVI. So thank you, and may God bless these beautiful islands, and may He guide us as we work together to build a tourism industry that is not only successful, but worthy of the generations that will follow us. Thank you.